Key point 1. Your habits can define your success or failure. When people act consistently over time, they form habits. Understanding the process of developing habits can be mind-boggling. It doesn't happen by accident or by witchcraft. The brain recognizes and processes specific actions with the promise of a reward. Nobody's born with good or bad habits. Everyone forms them as they go through their daily lives. The good news is you can acquire any routine you want. The not-so-good news is that the bad habits can stick to you just as easily. Don't worry though. With enough determination, you'll be in control of the situation. Studies showed that 40% of our daily actions do not require us to make any decisions, but they are habits we've formed over time. While we like to think that we have control over all our actions, our habits control us to a large extent. The good news is that they are temporary. You can change a bad habit even though it may take time and effort. Transforming a habit isn't necessarily easy or quick. It isn't always simple, but it is possible. Charles Duhigg. Duhigg's work for the Baghdad media piqued his interest in studying habits. In his opinion, the U.S. military is a huge experiment in habit formation because they perform the same daily actions. He noticed that the soldiers were precise in their efforts because of the daily training, which led him to research habits and how they can change our lives. Nobody can change your habits for you. You must choose desirable habits daily. Stay tuned to learn more about Duhigg's research and how you can take control of your life by changing your habits. Additionally, discover how your organization or company can cash in on these practices to beat the competition and how you can transform your old routines into new ones to lead you to success. Key point 2. Build habits to save brain energy. The brain is a complex organ, but it's always looking for ways to try and save energy and effort. However, habits occur without much thought. Once a pattern is formed, decision-making related to that habit slows down and eventually stops. If you decide to change your routine, the learning process begins again. Researchers from the Cognitive Sciences Department of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology studied sedated rats. These studies aimed to learn more about habit formation and the critical processes involved. Studies began in the 1990s when researchers developed an interest in a deep group of structures near the brain center called the basal ganglia. Every aspect of the brain controls specific functions in the body. The basal ganglia are located close to the brainstem and are one of the most primitive parts of the complex brain. Although it's almost the same size as a golf ball, researchers have been trying to understand its multiple functions for years. The research on the rats revealed many previously unknown facts. A study showed that the basal ganglia play a vital role in understanding and remembering patterns and forming the behaviors linked to them. It is also the storage house for habits during waking and sleeping hours. Before a habit forms, it has 3 steps. The habit loop consists of a cue, a routine, and a reward. These steps create a pattern and provide the necessary motivation from the start of habit formation to the end. The cue is a trigger that pushes your brain into autopilot and decides the habit to use at that time. A routine can be physical, mental, or emotional. It's how your brain recognizes a pattern after a few trials. The last step is the reward. This step determines whether or not an action deserves to become a habit. The brain responds faster to a trigger only when it deems it worthwhile. A cue can be anything in a person's environment, but the routine can be complicated or easy. In the end, the reward usually feels pleasant to the physical body, forcing your brain to take note of this good feeling. Did you know the most common bad habit is nail biting? Key point 3. Your organization can cash in on your habits. How can an organization make money from your habitual practices? It's pretty simple. They only need to give you a cue that encourages you to find a reward. The biggest companies in the world use this method. Over time, the habit becomes firmly ingrained and you keep returning to purchase their goods. Habitual practices are frequently used in marketing products. Take Quaker Oats, for example. This breakfast cereal promises to give 24-hour energy boosts if people eat it in the morning. Some medicines are supposed to clear up skin conditions or even get rid of joint pain, but you have to take them as soon as you notice the symptoms and then continuously after that. These are triggers that form a routine. The reward is that you feel and look better, something everyone wants. Before you know it, you're buying all their products and seeing no results. Consumer psychologists report that advertising is a technique that prompts purchases. When you see an advert, your brain starts to crave a reward associated with a trigger, and this is what is called neurological craving. Researchers at New Mexico State University conducted a study in 2002. They wanted to find out why people regularly exercise, even though it isn't easy. Their findings showed that it all came down to the reward that the brain craves. In fact, 92% of the participants reported that they continue exercising as a habit because of how it made them feel. Companies often add something to their products to give you proof that it is working. This strengthens the reward and habit association. Companies also make predictions based on your habits. They have algorithms that monitor your Google searches, and some stores like Target make huge profits from their predictions. Also, practices can easily influence your decisions when shopping. For instance, a study showed that 5% of purchases were decided upon in-store, not because customers had planned to buy them in advance. In this case, even when the buyers wanted to save cash, their habits did not let them, and they made impulsive purchases they didn't want. Key point 4. Transforming old habits to pave the way for success. It might sound unbelievable when you hear that it's far easier to change a habit that you already have than to form a completely new one. But it is the truth. You already have some information about the old habit in your brain because you've developed a cue, routine, and reward. You need to change certain parts rather than start from the beginning. You can't extinguish a bad habit. You can only change it. Charles Duhigg. You can transform bad habits by changing your routine for the same reward. This approach helps treat alcoholism, obesity, and other mental health conditions. The willingness to change is necessary to form new positive habits. For example, consider a person who habitually bites their nails. They are given a card to mark whenever they feel the urge to bite their nails. The more they use the card, the more conscious of the habit they'll become. They were instructed to change their routine whenever they felt the urge to bite their nails. For instance, to put their hands in their pockets or sit on them and rub their arm to compensate for the physical sensation that nail biting gives. In this example, a habit was changed by identifying the cue, changing the routine, and substituting the sensation. To better understand habit formation and alteration, it's important to know that there are different types. You can differentiate between keystone habits and peripheral ones. Keystone habits matter more than others, both in life and in business. They influence how you work, sit, live, spend money, and communicate. These are the foundation from which everything else grows. For instance, Michael Phelps would not have become a multiple Olympic champion without keystone habits. These habits also explain why certain students in college do better than others, seemingly against all odds. Self-discipline is one of the keystone habits and includes not being late, working hard, and overcoming obstacles. This keystone habit is extremely positive and will see you toward success. Key point 5. One person's habits can inspire lasting generational change. Societal or communal habits can also influence the way individuals think and behave. Consider Rosa Parks, who started the civil rights movement many years ago. Back then, it was customary for black people to sit at the back of the bus, while white people occupied the front seats. One fateful day, Parks refused to move to the back of the bus, marking the start of the civil rights movement. This singular act built the foundation for today's equality movements, and why activities and habits are very interwoven. They depend on each other. Rosa Parks' refusal to change seats wasn't just about disobeying the rules. It was about challenging discrimination and wrongful societal regulations and standards. Movements begin as a result of already existing habits. Everyone in the community plays a role in the changes, affecting everybody in the long run. Movements foster unity and communal growth and encourage participants to develop new habits. Changing an entire regime may seem impossible, but revolutions don't start alone. Determined people who value their rights and freedoms aren't afraid to stand against detrimental social rules. You can't create a better, kinder world without change. This simple truth is intrinsically connected to the habits we have. If we allow ourselves to get used to injustice, we won't want to fight against it. Therefore, we must begin altering and tweaking our negative habits as individuals and as a society to welcome change and be ready to fight for our rights. Don't be afraid to start a movement. You hold the power to change not only your own routine, but also the habits of the entire community. So, there's no point in waiting for someone else to change something you're uncomfortable with. You can start a movement to make that change. Many things are wrong in our communities, and we cannot wait for the government to fix them. When you see a harmful social habit, challenge it. Be sure to educate yourself first and get people in your community involved. Together, we can change the world and override the system, one positive habit at a time. Key point 6. Changing habits is personal. You decide what you want. There are many ways to change a habit, but the most complicated part is that everyone is different. What works for you might not work for your sibling. You have to find out what works for you. Habits are also different and therefore require specific approaches. For instance, changing your communication style is different from changing how you prioritize your office tasks. In the same vein, giving up smoking is different from giving up carbs in your diet. All niches in your life contain habits you formed over the years, but they can be transformed. The change might require different strategies or take various amounts of time, since what works to eliminate one habit isn't necessarily applicable to others. Treat all your patterns as one big puzzle. You can always find the missing pieces and complete the picture. Learning a new habit is specific to the person in question, as there is no one-size-fits-all process. You need 4 main steps if you're ready to change a habit. First, identify the routine that forms the pattern. As discussed earlier, practice is the second part of habit formation. You need to establish what you must do to create a habit. Secondly, try to experiment with different rewards. This approach means you can substitute the negative reward with something positive. You can replace cigarettes with exercise if you're trying to change your smoking habit. Another step is to work on the habit cue, first habit formation step, and see if you can tweak it. So, for instance, you can set an alarm that reminds you it's time for exercise. Finally, go for your plan. The longer you think about it, the more you keep the harmful habit. Overthinking is dangerous and may lead to self-doubt. You might convince yourself that the change is too much to handle and decide to back off. You don't necessarily need a detailed, thorough plan to start working on yourself. Change begins with small steps. It takes many small efforts to create an impact. The key is staying determined. Just do it. Conclusion. Every individual has a set of habits they've built over time. The way you go about your day from start to finish is a reflection of your habits. If you notice you're not as productive as you want, or the people around you keep complaining about you, you might want to change some practices. As difficult as it sounds, it is possible. Each habit is unique and requires a particular approach, but you can manage them and alter the ones you want to improve. Large organizations already use your habits to make sales by making predictions and monitoring algorithms. You too can do the same for yourself. Turn your habits in your favor. A few habit changes might be all it takes to help you make more sales at work or have a happier home life. Identify them and start the process. People don't live in vacuums. They live in communities that can benefit from their habits. Therefore, choose to use your habits positively. When there needs to be a change, decide to contribute. You never know what'll happen. Maybe your actions will bring positive change to the entire community. Your practices are powerful and can control your life. Choose positive habits and watch your life change for the better. Try this. Think carefully about the products you regularly purchase and identify whether your purchasing habits are manipulated by companies using your practices to their benefit. You can list the pros and cons of buying each product and judge for yourself.